Welcome to Life Transformation Radio. This show is all about life transformations and our journeys from where we were to why we are doing what we are doing today. We will discuss the hiccups, the roller coasters, and the blood, sweat, and tears that has been poured out while discovering our purpose. It is all about our transformations. Here is your host, Sean Douglas.
Welcome all the listeners to Life Transformation Radio. I'm your host, Master Resilience Implementer, TEDx speaker, performance enhancement expert, and author, Sean Douglas. This show is currently heard in over 58 countries, such as the U.S., India, Canada, France, Australia, Belgium, Panama, Malaysia, Japan, all across the globe. So I want to thank you to those who are tuning in from wherever you are. Life Transformation Radio is all about our transformation. Here, we tell the stories of why we're doing what we're doing. We highlight the transformational moments that have changed our lives and how we then use these to help transform others and elevate their lives as well. You can listen to us live at about noon, maybe 1 p.m. We do these lunch and learns, but we will return to a 5:30 p.m. Eastern time around September. So from now until September, we're going to be doing what's called a lunch and learn at about noon, maybe 1 p.m. Eastern time. You can join our Facebook community, Life Transformation Radio community. Never miss an episode by subscribing, rating, and please review the show on iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, TuneIn, Player FM, or the Google Play Music app, or right here on Blog Talk Radio. On the show are entrepreneurs, speakers, business owners, coaches, podcasters, authors, and other amazing people who are impacting the world around them. And my guest today does exactly that. If you have any questions for any of the guests that I ever bring on the show during our live broadcast, you can call in at 657-383-1109. Again, the number is 657-383-1109. So please help me welcome to the show, Mario Porreca. What's up, my friend?
Hey, Sean. Thanks for having me. It's great to talk to you again, and I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, so I was a guest on your show, which is called the 10-Minute Mindset, and it was absolutely incredible. We did like a live version, and then we did like the regular podcast type version. Man, it was super great, super cool, and I really appreciated being on that show.
Yeah, thanks. It was awesome to have you. I mean, we had a great time, and it's fun to like flip the desk around here, have me on the other side, be a guest this time, take some of the pressure off.
Right.
But, yeah, it was fun. So we did it live, and we did recorded. Now we're back to live. So we kind of do it all.
I think podcasters have the funniest conversations because like we're so used to asking questions, and then when we get interviewed, you know, we have the same kind of mentality, like we don't want to try to dominate the show, but like we're so used to it, right?
Oh yeah.
And then you know, you start like, am I talking too much? Like, was that a great answer? Like, then you start like flipping it, right? You're like, oh man, did I answer that the right way? Oh wait, well I wouldn't do that as a host, and that, like, you know what I mean? It's like the funniest conversation.
Almost every podcast that I've been a guest on, I've had that same dialogue in my head that you just talked about. And I always feel like I talk too much, like I took over their show, and I kind of feel bad. But then when I'm the interviewer, like before we hopped on here, I recorded a couple episodes of my podcast with a guest, and I told him after the first episode that we recorded, I asked him 2 questions. And granted, my podcast is only 10 minutes long, but I asked him 2 questions, and that was it. He just went because he's a public speaker, and you know how we are as speakers and podcasters.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, don't give him a microphone. Are the best interviews. The best interviews are the ones where you ask a question, and then you just shut up and you let the guest go. If they're talking about things that are valuable and they're talking about things that are interesting, that's the best.
Right. Yep. Absolutely, man. So if you're ready to jump in, man, let's do this.
Yeah, let's go.
The title of the episode is Align Your Mindset, Purpose, and Passion with Mario Porreca. He is an entrepreneur, author, and mindset performance strategist. Love it. Love the title. Mario started his story as a performer sneaking into the waiting room of his father's chiropractic clinic to put on shows for the patients who were waiting. Everyone loved the shows except for the staff who grew tired of seeing the same renditions of Dumbo, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and The Wizard of Oz over and over again. After high school, Mario pursued his second love in life, hoping to change people's lives using it as a medium, food. He was a very successful chef for nearly 6 years before the intense calling of working more closely with others was too loud to ignore. He left the kitchen and started his own business, ironically out of his father's chiropractic clinic, coaching people to reach their health, wellness, weight, and mindset goals. As Mario operated this business, he was also spending every available second studying mindset, psychology, personal growth, spiritual development, and more to apply what he learned to his own life and to, more importantly, be able to serve others at a deeper, more profound level. Mario has authored 2 cookbooks geared toward healthy living and has also authored a 3rd book centered around achieving personal and business success. Mario has appeared on TV over 50 times promoting his books and business and has been featured speaker for numerous groups, events, schools, and corporations. Mario's main focus is coaching busy achievers to align their mindset, purpose, and passion to experience life at a deeper, more profound level. Now, you can copy and paste any of these links right into your browser and go check him out. His website is Mario Porreca, Porreca.com. You can look at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. They're all there. Connect with the guy. He is achieving great, great success. So, dude, I love Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Wizard of Oz is okay. Dumbo is what it was. But, dude, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, like, man, I know how upset I was, which I think it was made this way, but, like, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was, like, nowhere near.
Yeah,
nowhere near as good
that.
as Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
That was a travesty. It was a tragedy.
It was awful.
Gene Wilder was, as Willy Wonka, was amazing. I don't think they could have picked anyone any better. But that whole thing, and those three movies, for whatever reason, when I say Dumbo, people think about the elephant, but it really wasn't the elephant. I'll give you and your listeners, it's the first time I've ever talked about this in a public place, but it wasn't the elephant that I was obsessed with when I was watching Dumbo. It was the ringmaster. For whatever reason, I love the ringmaster. Probably because he was in charge. Probably because he ran the show. But that's who I always wanted to be, was in that movie. And then The Wizard of Oz, I loved because of the whole make-believe aspect, the whole Land of Oz, all that magical stuff. And that still runs in my life to this day, where it's like, people say be realistic, grow up. I hate when people say that stuff, because why should I be realistic? And who are you to tell me to be realistic? Because we had this discussion, I think, on 10-Minute Mindset, and I don't want to grow up. I want to have fun. This is my life. I want to have fun with it. I want to enjoy it. I want to live it the way that I feel most aligned. And so I always resonated with that whole, and you look at Willy Wonka and you look at that chocolate factory. Who wouldn't want to live in that chocolate factory? So I mean, those are the 3 things that I would watch over and over and over again, and to the point where I had them memorized. And I'm talking, I was like 2-3 years old, and my dad's office and our house were connected, and so they had a baby gate that was in between the office and the house, and so I would figure out a way to climb over that gate, which was big for me at the time, get into the waiting room. And I would take props and everything, and I would be jamming out there with his patients, and it was fun. It was something that, to this day, 30 years later, when I go back to the office to visit, his older patients will come in and they'll tell me stories about remembering watching me perform there. And that made me think that if someone that age, 2-3 years old, can make an impact on someone where they're just doing what's intuitive to them, 30 years later they come in and they still remember that. Think of how much of an impact you can make if you're intentional and you actually want to make that impact, and you go out and do that. And that just showed me, what was possible, because by just doing what it was, like I said, intuitive, what was second nature, you make this impact where 30 years later they're still talking about it. So if you want to make that impact, if you desire to make that impact, if you say to yourself, look, I want to answer the calling that I have in this life, and I want to impact others in the most profound way possible and make that influence on people, think of what you can accomplish. The sky's the limit.
Oh, yeah, man. Definitely. You know, I think that what stuck out to me is that you said 30 years later, like, that's amazing that he has the same patience for 30 years. That's incredible.
Yeah. He has a really good practice, and I worked with a lot of his patients when I was, when I first came out of the restaurant world and went into coaching. And he has a very loyal patient base, and that's where I learned to be an entrepreneur. My grandfather was an entrepreneur. He came here from Italy when he was 17 years old, and my father saw that. And my grandfather owned a construction company that did commercial construction. They built hospitals, schools, things of that nature. And then my father became a chiropractor, so he had his own business. He ran his chiropractic practice that he still operates to this day, and he does various side ventures as well. And so I grew up around that, and I saw that. And so my whole goal was to have a restaurant empire. I didn't want to be just a cook. I wanted to own the joint, right? And I wanted to have quite a few of them. And so if you would have talked to me 10 years ago and asked me where will you be in 10 years, today I should be operating 3 or 4 restaurants, getting ready to open another. But that's not the way life went, because when you're always open to the possibilities and you're always looking for opportunities, you just have to go with where you're meant to be going. And if you do that and you're open to it, it's the place of least resistance, right? When you have this idea in your head that you have to be a certain thing, or you have to be a certain way, or you have to achieve something specifically, that's when you have those expectations and you open yourself up to what we define as failure. And I personally don't believe in failure. I just believe that failure is simply when we fail to meet the expectations that we set for ourselves. But if we don't have expectations and we live every day with gratitude and appreciation, and we're just always open to the possibilities that, hey, this is what I want to achieve, but what if it's better than that? What if I'm open to things and it ends up being better than I ever could have imagined? And that's where I find myself sitting today is, I never thought that I would be coaching people and, still cooking here and there and being able to have fun with that and, living my own life on my terms the way I want to, while still making a profound impact with other people. I never thought that I'd be there. I thought that I'd be, making food, operating a business and doing that whole thing. But because I was open to the possibilities, I am getting to experience life at a whole new level, and I'm thankful and grateful for that every single day.
Very cool, man. Very cool. So let's dive deep into that, what you just said, living life on your own terms. Let's dive deep into that. Okay. What does that look like for you? What is the really, get down deep, like what is the why? Why do you do what you do? Why didn't you open up a bunch of restaurants? And why did you write a book? And why do you have a podcast? What is your big why for what you do?
To me, it's all about alignment, and it's all about being connected with yourself. So when you feel, there's two ways that I look at things. If I have to push to do things, then I know that I'm not on the right track. But if I feel like I'm being pulled to do things, then I want to go that way more often. So anytime you push something, it pushes back, right? So when I was in the kitchen initially, and when I first started as a chef, it felt like I was supposed to be there. And I would never trade those days for anything in the world. I learned so much when I was there. I learned about work ethic. I learned about managing people. I learned about relationships. I learned how businesses were run. I learned so much there. But it got to a point after 6 years where I was burnt out, where I was struggling, where it felt like me going into work every day was me having to push, and it was pushing back, and it was just not a good place for me to be in. That's why I ended up gaining weight. I ended up, my attitude went downhill, and it was very negative a lot of the times. I was treating people in ways that I wasn't proud of. So I was just in a place where I knew that things needed to change. And so when I made that shift, the first thing I did was take control of my body. The first thing I did was something that I knew I could control, which was to stop eating like a pig, right? And start working out more, because I was always an athlete my whole life up until that point. And then when I was working in the kitchen, I was working like 60 to 80-hour weeks. I didn't feel like going to the gym. And because I wasn't eating correctly and wasn't sleeping right, I had no energy. So the first thing I did was the thing that I knew I had control over, which was my body. So I started sleeping more. I started eating better. I started exercising again. My energy went up. I lost weight. I felt better. My attitude changed, and that changed the game for me. And then from that point is when I started to open my eyes to other possibilities, because I didn't want to fall back into that rut. I didn't want to fall into that place where I was pushing instead of being pulled. And so right now with what I do with the whole writing, I never really enjoyed. I always was good at English in high school, right? But I never thought that I would be a writer. I never thought that writing would be an outlet for me or something that I wanted to do. And writing's one of the things I enjoy doing most these days. I mean, I just love it. I love to sit down with a pen and paper or just my computer and get thoughts out of my head in a constructive way that can help other people. And when I went to college, when I was in culinary school, we had to take general ed classes. And one of those classes that I had to take was college writing. And I took the class, and I'll never forget, we had this one assignment where we had to write a paper that was about, there was instructions to do a certain task. And we could pick any task we wanted. And granted, all the people in this class, remember, all had different majors because it was just a gen ed class. And so I was culinary, of course, was my major. But one of the rules of this paper was that you had to write a paper that taught people how to do something, like to explain the process, but it couldn't be a recipe. And I got very upset about that because I said, you know what, this is my major, this is what I do, this is what I'm interested in, and you're telling me I can't write about what I'm interested in, so this is going to be painful. So to kind of be, somewhat of a jerk, I tried to pick the most boring topic I could pick, and I wrote a 4-page paper on how to sharpen a pencil. Like the old school number 2 pencils with the old school crank sharpener. I wrote a 4-page paper on how to sharpen a pencil. And I got really into detail about it, and I told this story, and I did this whole thing. But what I remember about that was I wrote it to be a smart aleck, right? And so the teacher at the end, when she's passing out papers, she comes up to me, and she goes, I just have one question for you. And I'm thinking, oh, here we go. And she goes, this is the best paper I've ever read. Do you mind if I keep it? And I was like, go ahead. Wow. And she said, I'll tell you one thing. You're a writer. No matter what you do, you're a writer. And I thought, well, that's always in my back pocket, right? If I need it. Yeah. And so that was the first part when you mentioned writing. That was the first glimpse that I had that writing may be an opportunity for me, because when I was just trying to mess around or just trying to prove a point, I did a pretty good job. And so I knew that writing was always something that I could fall back on, be passionate about, or something that I could do at that point. And that's when I started to get interested more in writing and reading and doing that. And that was in college. But so why do I do it? I do it because I feel like I need to make a mark. And it's not that I need to do it. It's just that I think people need help. And I think we're all here for different reasons. I think we all have a different calling. We all have a unique skill set. And I like to look back at, what do you do intuitively? What were you born with that you have? And when I'm coaching people, this is something that we really get into, because, we're taught as we get older and as we're out in society and as the world comes upon us, as I say, we're taught to really cover up certain things, and we're taught to be a certain way and do certain things. You go the old school mentality of you go to school, you get a good job, you work for 40 years, you retire, and then you live on your pension until you die. I didn't like that plan. And I don't think the world works that way anymore. But we're taught certain things, right, and we're still constantly comparing how is my path to the path of society, to what society says. How am I growing in the world compared to where society says I should be? Well, my question is, why does society have any say in who you are? So my whole thing is, what did I do intuitively? And now that I am where I am, and I look at like writing and public speaking and podcasting and TV that I've done in the past, and I look back at being in the waiting room and performing in front of the patients, that was something that I intuitively did. And performing and teaching are very, very close. They're very close. They're brothers, so to speak. And so now I see that, that was just something that was in me. That's something that I have. And so I believe that's part of my calling. And when you're aligned with who you are and what your calling is and with what your purpose is, that's the path of least resistance for you. That's when things start to fall into place. That's when, number one, you feel fulfillment because you're growing on purpose. And as you grow as a person and you have this knowledge that you're growing with, then you contribute that to others. And when you grow and contribute, you create fulfillment in your own life. And so now that you have fulfillment and you can operate from that place, the person who is the most powerful is the person who needs nothing. So if you can operate from that place of I need absolutely nothing, but I want to give everything, you become the most powerful person in the room. And so when you can do that and you operate in alignment from that place, that's true fulfillment, and that's actually being and living and doing, and you live on purpose. That to me is why I do what I do, because I want to live on purpose. I want to take the path of least resistance to give the most, to do what I can to help other people grow into their purpose so that I can see them live, because I know what it feels like. I know what it feels like to have to push against things and have to go in every day and do a job you don't want to do and try to find your way. And now I know what it's like on the other side, to be pulled and to be doing things that fulfill you and that excite you and that allow you to give back and do those sorts of things. And I want to see other people be able to do that too. Anytime you see someone who's miserable, it's heartbreaking, because life is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be very purposeful. It's supposed to be something that you get a lot out of. It's not supposed to be something that drains you. I don't believe we're born just to make it to death in one piece and then see what happens. I don't believe that. I believe there's this whole experience of life that we're supposed to experience, that we're supposed to take in, that we're supposed to participate in. And if we all do that together, it can be a magical experience, much like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory that we started with. So that's why I do what I do, and that's what I believe in. I believe in people becoming the best possible version of themselves, living life with that purpose and that passion, and really loving being where they are and who they can help and what they can do each and every day, waking up with that purpose, being excited for that day, instead of waking up and saying, oh God, it's Monday, waking up and saying, thank God it's Monday, right?
Right. Yeah, dude. Absolutely. I love it. And so let's talk about a transformational moment. Dig down, because we ask the hard questions on this show. What is a transformational moment that, had this not happened, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing today, or something would be drastically different, or you would have had a different outcome? What is a transformational moment that have put you on the path to what you're doing right now?
I can remember. I know exactly what it is, and I can remember it like it was yesterday. I was still cooking, and this is where I was at the point. I was up pretty much at my breaking point. I didn't know what to do, though, and I knew I was overweight. I knew I felt like crap, and I even had this conversation with myself at one point. And granted, at this point, I'm about 23 years old, okay, so I'm still pretty young, but I'm thinking in my mind, this is how I'm supposed to feel. I'm just getting older. And then I wanted to slap myself, and I'm like, getting older? You're not even 24 yet. So that was what led up to this. This is the mental place that I'm in, okay, just to give you that background. And then my father, like I said, he's a chiropractor, but he speaks all over the world on natural health and toxicity and nutrition and all that fun stuff. So he was actually coming back from a speaking engagement, and I went to pick him up at the airport. And being that I was working so much, I didn't see him that often, but I still saw. He's my dad. I saw him on a regular basis, maybe not every single day, but I saw him regularly. But I'll never forget, my father was someone who was also, much like me, he was an athlete growing up. He played baseball in college, and he wrestled and all that stuff. So he's always in good shape. Even when I was a little kid, I remember him being in good shape. And he was a recreational weightlifter, just like I am. But when he hit his mid-30s, he put on a lot of weight. And I watched him struggle, and I watched him try to lose weight using every different diet, every different method that you can imagine, just trying to figure out a way to be that example of health for his patients. And so I watched this happen, this whole struggle. And he would lose some weight, and then he would gain it back. Then he would lose weight and gain it back, and it was like this cycle. Well, this one day I went to the airport to pick him up he got back from his flight, because I worked in Pittsburgh, and the airport's in Pittsburgh. And I was standing by not at the gate, but by on the other side of security where the passengers come out. And I remember I saw all these people coming, and I'm looking for him, and I'm looking for him, and looking for him. And all of a sudden, he's standing right in front of me. And I didn't recognize him until he was in front of me, because he lost 80 pounds. and he looked like a totally different person, and he looked really good, healthy. You know, it wasn't like there's some of those people that lose a lot of weight that have all that like skin and they look tired and lethargic. He wasn't like that. He looked really good and healthy and vibrant. And that's the moment when I saw that and I said, whatever he's doing, I need to do too, because I need to make this change. I'm overweight, I'm tired, I'm stressed, I don't like where I am emotionally. And so that's when I asked him and I said, look, can you help me? I need to get my body back. I need to get my energy back. I need to get my enthusiasm back. Whatever you're doing, can you help me? And so that's when he coached me to do exactly what he did. And that's what led me to lose 70 pounds. And that changed everything, because at that point people started asking me what I was doing because they saw that transformation in me. And so I started coaching them. And when I was coaching them, you know, then their friends would come and ask me what I was doing. And I was still cooking, but people wanted to know what I was doing to transform my body. And so as I was coaching them, I created this coaching business that ended up making more money than when I was cooking. So that's what allowed me to leave the kitchen and pursue, because I thought at that point, if I'm making more money doing this than when I'm cooking, what would happen if I became intentional about this and I actually went out and tried to help people with it instead of just allowing them to come to me? So at that point, I went out and started talking to people about this and trying to help them, and that's where coaching began, and that's what led me on the path to learning about mindset and learning about psychology and learning about how to help people on both sides of the fence from a physical and emotional standpoint and psychological standpoint, as opposed to just a physical point. So that point of transformation for me was when I realized that I didn't recognize him, and that's what led me to say I need to make this change too. Little did I know that change is what was going to lead me on the path to where I am today.
Very cool, man. I think, oh man, I have so much running through my head right now. I'm just like, where do I begin? You know, but I think that it sounds like you're super passionate about that though, right? Like it wasn't like, you know, because I asked that question to people and they're like, well, like me, like, you know, well, you know, put a gun in my mouth. You know, some people are like, well, you know, my life went up in flames because I had cancer, or you know, it's like this super dark, like, but it wasn't so, like, it wasn't so dark for you.
No.
You know, like it wasn't like all doom and gloom and like, and all that because when I think of transformation, I think of, it could be anything. It could be, man, I had one person lend me money, you know, and it kept me from sleeping in my car, and I built this business and I paid them back plus double, and I changed their, you know, it could be awesome stuff, you know, but I don't think it's all doom and gloom for transformation. I think that, I think that anytime you go from one point to another and there's a shift, whether it be a mindset shift or a shift in direction or something amazing happens as a result of the one decision, dude, transforms lives.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I use that when I tell my story. I get that a lot, you know, how you have, you know, there's very dramatic stories that people have, and I respect everyone who has a transformational moment, and I respect everyone's stories. And if you're someone who came from a very dark place, I absolutely respect that, and I want to learn from that. But I'm a little bit different myself, because like you said, I didn't have that. I had a great childhood growing up. I have a great family to this day. I had support my entire life. Even when I left the kitchen to pursue cooking, I had people in my life tell me I was nuts because it was less traditional, but my closest friends and family weren't that. They were always very supportive of me. So I didn't have a lot of those hurdles, so to speak, to overcome that a lot of people do. I mean, granted, I had my own hurdles and I had to grow through them, because we all do when we transform, but it wasn't that whole I had to sleep on the street type deal or anything like that. And, you know, I'm actually proud of that, and I wear that with honor, because, you know, people, when I'm talking to a prospective client about coaching, so to speak, something that it doesn't come up often, but it's come up once or twice, which is like, well, my life is in a darker place than yours has ever been. How can you help me? You don't know what I'm going through. And to which I answer, you know what? Why would you want to talk to someone who's been in a dark place then? Why don't you want to talk to someone who has actually had it well their whole? Why don't you learn from someone who's done it the way you want to do it? Right? So I like that flip side of my story, and I have immense amounts of gratitude towards that, because I don't believe that you need to go through hell to get to heaven. I don't believe that. I believe that some people, that's their initiation. Some people do that, but I believe that everyone is a product of their choices. I could have made drastically different choices and been in a drastically different place. I had the opportunity, especially with some, I love the people I worked with for the most part, but you always have that temptation. You always have those people that like to go out and party a little too hard, that like to do things one too many times. And if that's your bag, by all means, go for it. If you like that and you're not complaining and that's the way you live your life, I have no ill will towards you. I do not judge anyone because I've seen some things. But I never made those choices. I always made the choices that I thought were more in line with who I am and where I want to be. And, yeah, I missed some things in life. For instance, I didn't have the standard college experience like a lot of people have, because when all my friends went off to college, I did an apprenticeship. So I went right from high school into cooking, into the kitchen. So I was working 60, 80-hour weeks while my friends were partying in college. So, yeah, do I feel like I missed that? Yes and no. I feel like I missed out on some form of an experience, but I don't necessarily think I need to have that experience to become who I'm meant to be, because I don't think you miss out on things really, as long as you're on the path that is most aligns with who you are and what your greater calling is. So, I feel like that it's not a product of, you don't have to go through those really dark things like you said to be able to help other people. I believe that it's all a product of our choices, and if you want to make better choices, go talk to someone who's made better choices, and they'll teach you how to make better choices. And so that's my whole philosophy on that whole thing.
Very cool, man. Yeah, I wrote a book about this. It's not really a decision-making process, but then it kind of is. I wrote a book back in 2016 called Decisions, The Power to Overcome Self-Defeating Behaviors, because I know a lot of the indecisive people, and then they end up making the wrong decision because they get what I guess what they call nowadays is analysis paralysis. They're like, do I do it? Do I not do it? Like, what do I do? Like, they put so much thought into it that they just end up making a bad decision.
Yes. And I've said that on 10-Minute Mindset on my show a lot, where when we talk about decisions, the strongest power we have as human beings is the power to choose again. Because what happens to most people is they're so afraid to make the wrong decision that they make no decision, and that in and of itself is a decision. So the whole idea is you're faced with a tough decision, when you're faced with something like that, instead of not deciding, make a decision regardless, and don't be attached to the outcome. Just decide and do something, because our greatest power as human beings, again, is the decision to choose again. Meaning, if you make a decision and it doesn't turn out the way that you thought or the way that you wanted it to, you can always make another decision. As long as you're alive, you can always choose again. It's not a game where you make one decision and if you're wrong, you felt like, I like to think about Nintendo, because I used to play Nintendo as a kid, and then it turned into Sega Genesis, and then N64, and then I'm dating myself, but all those games all the way up to Xbox and everything today. So with my friends, we used to play video games, but you always had that point of the game where you made the decision, like back in the day. Nowadays, it's a little bit different, but if you remember the old school Nintendo days, like Super Mario Brothers and Contra and all those things, you had to, if you got to like level 8, which was typically the end of the game, level 8, level 10, it was stressful, because if you make that wrong decision and you don't jump far enough, or you jump the wrong way and you end up dying, you got to start all the way back at the beginning again.
Oh, yeah.
Before you get back to that point. And so it's not like, life isn't like that. Life isn't typically like, if you make that decision, you got to start all the way at the beginning. If you decide and you're wrong, unless it's a drastically wrong decision, and it's something that it may be wrong morally or something like that, that's a whole different discussion. But if you make a decision and it doesn't turn out the way you want, typically you can just decide to try something else. And you can try to do it again, and you can try to do it differently. So it's not like, life typically isn't like those old school Nintendo games where you make a decision and you got to start back at level 1. You may go from level 8 to level 4, but that's still not that bad, because you can make the decision and be back at level 8 really quickly, especially with what you've learned along the way.
Yeah, especially if you go through the one tunnel down the tube and then behind the wall to get the whistle.
Yeah.
And then you just warp worlds like Super Mario Brothers 3.
You need that. Do you remember Game Genie? You remember that thing?
Oh yeah, man. Game Genie. Oh my God.
You put it on the cartridge, you got that code book. See, kids today, they don't remember that. They don't know that stuff. But
they don't.
Yeah,
now they have
those were
Google.
the good old days. Yeah, right.
I know, right? And do you remember the Choose Your Own Story book? Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
You're reading this book, right? And I was like, I don't know if the book was designed to play it safe, but I remember this one book where it was like anything dangerous, it would be like you're going to this cave and you come up to a Y and you hear some grumblings from the cave on the left, but you see some light at the end of the tunnel on the right. Where would you go? And of course, it's like turn to page 58 to take cave on the left, turn to page 60 to take the cave on the right. You're like, take cave on the left, turn the page. You died. Dang it.
Yeah.
I don't want you to stop there, you know? You know what I mean? It's almost like every time, like, I don't know, man. I used to love those books, like Choose Your Own Adventure books.
Yeah.
You know? And it was, I don't know. I mean, it was all right, you know, but, I kind of wanted to see kind of where it goes. You know, I kind of wanted to shake this other path. It was always like, you died. Dang it. Sound like a better path.
Maybe that's your next project. Maybe you need to write a Choose Your Own Adventure book for people who want to make a transformation.
Oh, dude, that sounds like a new category of book, of genre book, like a self-help book, right?
Yes,
like a shift your mindset book.
Yeah, for people who are afraid to make that decision, now you can make the decision in the book before you apply it to real life.
Right, and it could be like this is what will happen if you don't make this decision. Turn to page this if you don't know what decision to make. Turn to page this if you make whatever decision, you know. And it was like, now you're stuck in this mindset, and now your life's kind of stuck. And then, like all this doom and gloom. Dude, that would be dude. Very cool. That's why I love doing the shows, man. It's almost like a mastermind meet. You know, you're learning about somebody or this. You're like, yeah. It's almost like you're masterminding. I love it.
Absolutely.
Very cool. So moving forward, you leave the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
You're not doing it. You're studying all this great stuff about personal growth and development, and then you're authoring books at the same time. You're on TV. I mean, you're crushing this thing, right? I mean, Mindset Performance Strategist, amazing. So, what is your message, and how are you using your transformation to align your mindset and purpose and passion, and how do you get others to do it?
Yeah. Well, my message is, let me take you back, because I didn't really jump into mindset right out of the gate. At first, I was, like I said, I left the kitchen. I was coaching people on weight loss, and this is what brought the mindset thing into my vision, so to speak. I was coaching people, and what I noticed was, after about 6 months, I started to notice that if people would work with me and would apply themselves to the process, I would get results for nearly everyone. They would lose the weight they want to lose. They would feel great. They would be happy. But what I noticed was half of the people that I would work with would do what I did and make a lifestyle change and keep their weight off for the long term, while the other half would lose the weight, feel great for a few days, and then go back to their old ways. And within a matter of months, they would be back to their old weight, and some would even be heavier. And this blew my mind. I couldn't figure out why half the people would get to this result that they worked so hard for, that they wanted so bad, and then automatically shift back to their old behaviors and go back to where they started. I just couldn't figure it out. It didn't make any logical sense to me. So at that point, I started asking a lot of questions. I started asking experts in the weight loss field, in the psychology field. I started asking the people who were actually losing the weight, and the ones who did keep it off successfully. I talked to some who didn't, and I started doing a lot of reading. And what I learned was the people who kept the weight off, they went into it with a long-term vision. They went into it with a long-term vision of, I want to lose this weight, but then they had an idea of what they wanted life to look like after they lost the weight. So they would say, I want to lose 25 pounds, and then as soon as they would get close to the 25 pounds, they would change their goal to, I want to run a marathon, or I want to do a Tough Mudder, or I want to gain 5 pounds of muscle in the gym, or, I want to spend more time outside with my grandchildren, whatever. They would have this next level goal that they wanted to get to. So their identity had to shift from being the person they started as to now being the 25-pound lighter version of themselves, and then they would start an identity shift to becoming the person who ran the marathon or the Tough Mudder or whatever. Whereas this other group of people that would gain the weight back, I noticed their goals were, I want to lose 25 pounds, for instance, so I look good at my class reunion, or so I fit into my bathing suit on vacation, or so I fit into this dress at my friend's wedding. And they would lose the weight, they would go to the event and do it, but then after the event they would feel really good about themselves, and they would say, well, now what? And they wouldn't know where to go. And what happens is, what I learned was, whenever we're confused or up against an obstacle or we feel stuck, we always revert back to our strongest conditioning. And because they didn't make that identity shift, because all they were focused on was this short-term goal, this event, or this place in time, or this feeling, and once that was gone, they didn't know where to go. So they reverted back to their old behaviors, which got them to being heavier in the first place. And that's why they couldn't maintain the results. So I realized that it was all a mindset thing. If they had the right mindset, they could shift their identity and keep the results for the long term, because they became a different person. Whereas these other people who didn't have that mindset, after the event was over, they would look in the mirror and they would still see themselves as that heavier version of themselves, because they didn't shift that identity. And when that happens, it's only a matter of time before you go back to becoming that person again and manifesting it in the real world again. And so that's what got me on this mindset thing. And that's when I started really studying, when I learned that, everything starts with a thought. Everything begins with a thought. And now, thoughts in and of themselves have very little power. But when you attach emotion to a thought, it becomes infinitely powerful, because it then becomes a desire. And when you have a desire, if it's strong enough, that leads you into action. And then once you take action, you create a result, and that result creates a belief. And that belief creates more thoughts. So once you believe something about yourself, that will either attract better thoughts or disempowering thoughts. And if you're attracting better thoughts, now you're going to attach emotion to better things, and you're going to create more results, which will then reinforce that belief. So everything starts with a thought, and that's where mindset really became a powerful thing for me, and something that I really got obsessed with. So then I started taking classes. I became certified in certain things. I went to a ton of different seminars. I read a ton of different books, which I still do this day, listening to audios, that whole thing. And I realized that, it's all about the thoughts we think, and it's all about our identity. Because as human beings, our greatest need is to act in alignment with who we believe we are. We're always trying to prove to ourselves who we think we are. And so if you can change your identity and you can up-level and become that next best version of yourself, or that person who you want to become, then you will maintain that. Because when you have the identity of someone who goes to the gym, it doesn't matter what the weather's like outside. It doesn't matter how far away it is. It doesn't matter if you're traveling. You're going to go to the gym because that's just who you are. And the way I like to explain this to people is, remember when you first started to drive, for instance? Mm-hmm. The first time you get in the car, right, it's tough, right? You're checking the mirror. You're using both hands on the wheels. You're checking all the little things, so you make sure you have the turn signal on. You're really paying attention to what you're doing. Now, all these years later, after you've been driving, you get in the car, and some of you, probably, I'm not saying this is a good idea, but you probably drive with your knees while you're texting in one hand, eating a sandwich in the other, listening to the radio on full blast, and driving down the street. Why? Because your identity has shifted. You're now someone who just drives. You just get in and you drive. You know how to do it. And when you think about all the different things that happens when you're behind the wheel, watching all the signs, watching the streetlights, watching the other cars, shifting in and out of lanes, making turns, looking at your GPS, talking on the phone, all those different things, and you can still drive because you have that identity and you know that you're a driver. Same thing when kids learn to walk. How many times have you seen a child learning how to walk, and as a parent, Sean, you're a parent, you've been through this, when your kids were trying to walk, they fall 2 or 3 times. Did you ever say, you're just not a walker, forget it, just stop, you're just not meant to walk? Right? It doesn't happen. You say, get up and try again.
You should just stop while you're ahead. You should just crawl the rest of your life.
Exactly, yeah. That doesn't happen. You don't say that.
God,
and so,
holy freaking shit, dude. My mind is freaking blown right now. My mind is
until you get it.
Blown. How many times do people give up and say, I'm not supposed to be a speaker, I'm not supposed to do this, I'm not Exactly. But did you give up when you were trying to walk? As a parent, do you tell your child, you know what, you should just give up? But we do that to people. We do that to our friends. Maybe this job wasn't for you. Maybe this, holy freaking, dude, just that statement right there puts everything into perspective. Oh my freaking God, dude.
And so you'll tell your kids that. You tell them, get up and do it again, get up and do it again. And for the most part, unless, you have a physical disability or something of that nature, we all walk, right? We all drive, right? I mean, I know some people who drive and they're not very driven individuals. And that's the thing that you can ask yourself when you're trying to do something new and you're trying some new stuff. Who do I know that may know less than me and is definitely not as driven as me and definitely doesn't work as hard as me that is already doing this? And I'm sure you can think of a handful of people. And when that's the case, then there's evidence that you can go do it too. It's just a matter of learning skills. It's a matter of applying yourself. It's a matter of shifting your identity. That's the real key. If you can shift your identity, that moment when you become a walker, right? When you're crawling and you become a walker and you just become someone who walks. Now you don't have to think about walking anymore. You just walk. You get from place to place from walking instead of crawling. It's an identity shift. You see that you can do it, and then you just do it intuitively. And so that's, the real key there. Anytime you want to create lasting change in your life, you need to shift your identity and become that person. Most people think, look, once I start making more money, I'll start acting like I have money. And that's not how it works. You need to start acting. You need to become the person who has more money in order to attract the money. And it's right. The same thing with money. It's a relationship thing too, because we have relationships. Think about the way you treat people, right? And I had a guy on the podcast. We talked about this at the beginning. That was a great interview about money, and he was a coach as well. And we had this great dialogue about money. And it goes back to think about the way you treat money. And you know how people say, "Oh, money doesn't matter. I don't need money." All this stuff. They have these views towards money. Well, what if you treated your wife or your girlfriend that way? What if you're like, "Oh, I don't need you. You're not that important. You don't make me happy." How do you think they would feel? They'd probably leave, right? You do that for so long, they'd leave. And that's what happens with money. When you say those things and you have those feelings, money's going to leave. It doesn't want to be around you. So you got to create a better relationship with money in order to attract it. And that's the same thing with your identity. You need to have this identity of, I deserve money. Money's not hard to make. Money comes to me because I provide value to other people, and it's the universal law of exchange. And that's just the way it is. And once you take on that identity, and most people think, well, once I see my bank account go up, then I'll start to believe that. And that's just not the way it works, because your bank account can never go up if you don't believe that. So that's why mindset is so important.
I like it.
And when it comes to purpose and passion, you will be passionate when you find your purpose. And that's what I tell most people. Because a lot of people ask me, they're like, how do I know? How do I know if that's what I'm supposed to do? And it's just, you just know. When you start doing something and it gets you out of bed in the morning and it excites you, and the only way to get there is you need to be very clear about it. When you listen to 10-Minute Mindset, and you've heard me do this, I start every day with what I call the GEO method: gratitude, intention, outcome. When you think about the first thing you need to know before you do anything is, what do you want to achieve? What is your outcome? And when you think about your outcome, it needs to be two things. It needs to be clear and it needs to be compelling. And when I say clear, I mean specific. So you need to know specifically what you want. If you know specifically what you want, for instance, if you say, I want more money, I'll give you $1, you have more money. Is that really what you wanted? Probably not. If you say, I want to lose weight, I'll say, okay, don't eat dinner tonight, go to bed, get up in the morning and weigh yourself. You probably lost 1 pound. But is that really what you want? Probably not. You still met your goal, though. You have to be very specific. How much money do you want? How much weight do you want to lose? If you want to travel, where do you want to go? When do you want to go there? And once you know those things, then they become exciting. Then you take that thought, you attach emotion to it, it becomes exciting. And then when it becomes exciting, you become passionate about it, and it drives you into action to creating those things. But you have to find, when you find your purpose, it's like you turn the light switch on. It becomes something, you become obsessed is what it is. But it's a good obsession, because it's the type of obsession that amplifies everything in your life. When you have an obsession that takes away from everything in your life, that's not your purpose. That's an obsession. It can even be an addiction, so to speak. But if you find something that makes everything else better, that makes you a better person, that gives you excitement, that helps you treat other people better, that helps you achieve more, to give more, to do more, to be more, that's your purpose. You'll live it with passion. And when you align those things and you create this identity and this mindset of the person that achieves that purpose at that highest level, that is your unique calling, and you use that to serve people and serve the world, now you're making an impact. Now you're leaving a legacy, and now you're living in complete alignment, and you're living with purpose.
Amazing. You should be a speaker.
Yeah, I do that every once in a while.
I kind of dabbled in that.
Yeah, done that here and there.
Dude, amazing, dude. You know, I always tell people that you need to turn your passion into profit, right?
Absolutely.
And so your purpose comes from the outcomes that you get. You know, your purpose isn't, well, my purpose is to be a speaker. But why? Because I just need to talk. No. Your purpose is you just happen to be a speaker. Your passion is speaking, right? Your passion is what you do. The purpose is like the outcome. That's how I just break it down to everybody. Like, the purpose is the outcome that you achieve. My purpose is to transform lives. My purpose is how? By turning my passion into profit, by becoming a professional speaker who gets paid to go speak at events. You know, my purpose is to teach people how to change their mindset, because my passion is, you know, speaking about mindset, whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And, you know, I tell everyone, too, that everyone's purpose is essentially, it's the same thing if you want to look at it that way. Everyone's purpose is to find what your calling is and to live that. That's what your purpose is. And we all have a unique calling that we are uniquely equipped to achieve and to answer. And that's the good news. The good news is when you find what your calling is, you were born intuitively, innately, with everything you need to accomplish that. Now, you may have to refine it. You may have to master it. For instance, I really believe the Beatles were born to make music. I believe that was their true calling, and they lived up to that, and they became the Beatles. But they weren't out of the womb able to play guitars and drums and instruments, right? They had to work their butt off, playing tons and tons of concerts, writing music, perfecting that skill, but they had that innate calling, and they became very passionate about it, and then they became the best in the world at it because of their mastery, and they became the Beatles. And so I tell people, you know, I have tons of things that I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about cooking. I'm passionate about baseball. I'm passionate about football. I'm passionate about mindset. I'm passionate about helping people. I'm passionate about playing with my dog. You know, I have a lot of passions, but I only really have one true calling, and I only have one purpose. Really, my purpose is to identify that calling and then to answer it, to act upon it and to answer it. And so once you find what your calling is, you have passion at a whole new level, because you don't have to, again, it's that difference between pushing and pulling. You don't have to be pushed to get up and go do it. You're pulled to do it. When you have that purpose, that calling, everything else that you have to do, you're thinking about that. You're trying to get done with what you have to do so that you can go work on that. And people say, well, why aren't you, you know, I don't watch a lot of TV myself personally. I just don't have time for it. And they're like, well, why don't you take some time off? Why don't you watch some TV? Why don't you relax in the evening? Well, when I'm working on my stuff, when I'm writing, when I'm working on my talks, when I'm working on my podcast, that is relaxing for me. It looks like work to you because that's not your calling. But that's what I do, and that's what I enjoy doing. That's what I want to do. I would much rather be working on my calling and working on this stuff passionately than sitting in front of the TV and watching someone else do it, because that's what those actors that you watch on TV, that's what they're doing. So why am I going to sit and watch them do what they're called to do instead of acting on what I'm called to do? And that's just the way I look at it.
Awesome. Yeah, man, couldn't agree with you more, man. So for the listeners listening, if you have any questions or if anything's resonated with you, you can dial in, talk to the guest or myself at the number is 657-383-1109. Again, the number is 657-383-1109. We are a live show, so if you're listening to us live, you can call in and talk to us, and we can try to answer any questions that you may have. The team is standing by to field the calls from people who think they can be funny and just ask stupid questions. So, questions before we wrap up. What are some of the resources that you use to become a mindset strategist? Was it a book that you read? Was it something that you saw on TV? Was it like Tony Robbins? I don't want to say what gives you the. I mean, I know you're not like a PhD, but I mean,
right?
Like what kind of research? Like what did you do? What did you read? You know, what was that process for you to say, okay, I am now I mastered this?
Yeah. Well, I love Tony Robbins. He was a big influence. Also, Wayne Dyer was a big influence on me as well. So I've read all of their stuff. Joe Dispenza, Greg Braden. I'm looking at my bookshelf now, trying to pull some things out of there because I've got tons of stuff up there. But what really I started doing the reading. I started listening to all the Audible stuff, all the audio books, and then I became certified in strategic intervention from the Robbins Madonnas Institute, which is a method of coaching to help people. Because I really believe too, as far as like coaching goes, coaching and therapy are two different things, right? They're not the same. And coaching is, I believe you have the answers inside of you, but you may need a little help to pull them out, because when you're in your own life, it's hard to see everything. Just like if you're playing baseball and you're playing center field, you're not going to have the same view as the manager has from the dugout. That's what makes him the manager. Right. He's got a different view, different perspective. He's not in the game. He's watching the game. And it's the same thing with coaching. And the other thing is, think about a book. If you take a book, I'm talking not a Kindle. I mean, you could do this with a Kindle, but look at an old school book, put it up against your nose and try to read it. Can't do it, right? But if you take it and you push it back 5 feet or an arm's 2 feet away from your face, now you can read the book, because you can't be all up in the pages and read the book. It just doesn't work that way. And that's the way life is too. So the reason that I got certified in that strategic intervention and that method is because I really believe that people have the answers within them. You don't need, whatever your calling is, whatever it is that you feel pulled to do, you don't need me to tell you what that is. In fact, I'm the last person that should tell you what that is. Nobody should tell you what that is. You need to discover that. But sometimes we need some help figuring that out. Sometimes we need help navigating the waters and decoding things in order to actually see them when we're all up in our own lives. So that's what I did. I went and got certified with that. And, the leadership conferences, my method is I go to at least 2 live events per year. And when I say, usually more than that, but at least 2. And when I say live events, I mean something that I actually have to travel to and stay in a hotel and immerse myself.
And you're not involved in,
right? Right, exactly. Yep. Yeah. And you go to those events and you immerse yourself, because it's immersion. You get out of your comfort zone, you get in a new environment, you meet new people, you learn new things. Because your brain, again, everything starts with a thought. But as long as you're doing the same things every single day, you're going to keep thinking the same thoughts, because the same actions lead to the same thoughts, just like the same thoughts lead to the same actions. So I want to get out. I want to go. So I go to 2 live events every year, non-negotiable. I schedule them. I go to them. And I also, throughout the week, I have when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is read. I read at least 1 chapter of a book as soon as I wake up. That way I get some good stuff into my mind before I start to do anything else. Typically I do the Bible. That's just what I do, because it's a thing that I can read over and over and over again. Sure. But whatever your thing is, you go do that. So that's how I start my day. And so I'm always making sure I'm putting good things into my mind from that place. Whenever I'm in my car, I don't listen to music in the car unless I'm going to like the gym and I want to get pumped up or something. But in the car, I always listen to an audiobook. On the treadmill, I always listen to an audiobook or a podcast. There's certain podcasts that I listen to. And so I'm always putting good stuff into my mind and trying to get better, trying to guide myself to become someone who's more. And when I look at things like that, I'm not trying to be like the personal growth guru, because I know a lot of people that read a lot of stuff but never put it into action. And to me, I think that's kind of a waste. So I am all about, how can I listen better? How can I become someone who understands people better? How can I become someone who understands how to help other people better? That's my that's what I'm asking myself as I listen to this stuff and learn this stuff, because it's not about me being able to tell you how to do it. It's about me being able to listen to you and your unique needs when I'm working with a client and help you navigate to what's going to be the most impactful, purposeful path for you, and that path of least resistance for yourself. And it's helping you, it's asking the right questions and coming up with the right framework to help you figure that out. And so that's really what I do. And that's my process and how I do things. And so I'm always taking courses. I'm always listening to things. I'm always learning, and I'm always trying to put those things into practice. So I do have a certification, but aside from that, I'm not one that buys into letters after names and diplomas and all that stuff. I mean, I think they're great, and if it's something that you're driven to do and it's, your bag, good for you. but it's just never been something that was really that important to me personally.
Yeah, I always say that experience trumps all.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, if I do something 1,000 times, I'm great. I don't know. I mean, the coaching thing and I call myself a mentor, not a coach, because I don't really care how it makes you feel. You know what I mean? I'm not the one going, well, if this happened, how did this make you feel? I cannot stand that. Right? Like, you know how it's going to make me feel. Why are you asking? You know, it's going to make me feel terrible that I just won $1 million. So it made me feel terrible. That's when I talk to coaches, I'll say that too. Like, well, how do you think that'll make you feel if you got your dream life? Like, it'll freaking be terrible. It'll be terrible.
And here's,
if I got my dream life, what kind of question is that?
Yeah.
How about you just tell me what I need to know? I need to know how to get more PR. I need to know how to market my business. I need to know how to get booked to speak. These are the things I must know.
Yep.
Not how I feel, not how they feel. What is the process? Give me the deets. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So
gotcha.
I get super frustrated listening to that.
And here's the other thing too to that, just to add to that, it's, when people are looking at it, when you talk about coaching and mentors and all those things, I think a real important thing for a lot of people to remember is to try to be as least attached as you can be. See, life is funny because it's like the give and take. There's two sides of everything, and the way I feel is if you have both needs pulling at the same time, then you can become centered, and that's where I want to be. And what I mean by that is this. For instance, I believe it's very important to have an outcome, to have a clear and compelling outcome that you're chasing. But at the same time, and so you have this outcome that you really want, that you visualize, that you're doing everything to try to achieve. But at the same time, I believe that you should be as least attached to that outcome as possible. Meaning, I want to go in that direction, I want to achieve that outcome, but at the same time, if I don't get that exact version of it, I'm okay with that. Because I'm open to the opportunities, I'm open to the possibilities, and maybe I get something better that I'm not even aware of yet. Because who am I to say that that's the best thing for me? Maybe, the universe or God or grace or whatever label you give that entity or that being or that energy, maybe they have something even more profound for you to do that you never would have thought of. And so, some of the most famous people in the world never thought that they would be that. Never thought that they would be the most impactful. Like Mother Teresa, for example. She wanted to serve. That was her whole mission, was to serve. But at the same time, because of her service was so great, she became one of the most iconic people in the world. Now, she didn't go after that, but because she was open and did what she had to do and was very stuck on the fact that I'm going to serve better than anyone else, she became that. So I really believe that there's these two sides, there's these two opposite forces that if they both pull at the same time and you both focus on both of them, you'll end up centered. And I believe that's what centered means, where I have this outcome, I want to achieve this, I'm going after this, I'm putting action into it every day. But at the same time, if I don't actually get to that, my own version of that, I'm okay with it. I'm unattached to that. And that keeps the lows not as low and the highs not as high. And it keeps you centered. And it allows you to be effective. And I think that's the most important thing, is how effective are you at doing what you're doing and serving other people and helping. And so that's the way I look at it. And I think that that's super important. For instance, I have this outcome. I'm a mindset guy. I do this stuff. I'm coaching and I'm helping people, and that's what I do. But at the same time, as I work through this every day, I feel other things too, that maybe other paths that I might want to explore and other things I might want to try. Like, for instance, my food thing is starting to come back. I love food. I always have. I always love to cook. And now I'm starting to get this urge to start cooking again. So for the last week or so, I've been exploring different opportunities to bring food back into my brand and bring food back into my world and try to, in a way that makes sense, obviously, that'll serve other people. But my point is, I'm not opposed to that. I'm not opposed to trying new things, seeing how they work, and adventuring and going down certain paths to see if, maybe that's the thing that leads me to where ultimately you're supposed to be. So it's about having that outcome, knowing what you want to do, putting energy into it, but at the same time being open to other possibilities and not being too attached to any one thing specifically, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to offer any unsolicited coaching or or tell you how to market your business. But have you ever thought about creating a keynote based on food? Like, you take this ingredient, and then amazing things happen. And what are those ingredients? Or, I hear that at 211 degrees, water is just hot water. but at 212, the water boils. A 1 degree difference makes all the difference in the world. You know what I mean? The same hot water that boils, the egg and hardens it is the one that softens the potato. Like all of these like metaphors for like food. Dude, you could so have like a great keynote about the art of cooking, right? Like you could say something like sometimes, there's a flash in the pan, thing that happens, like a one-off thing. You're like, how do I duplicate that? It's just like a miracle thing that happens. Or sometimes, you're just forged in the fire. You get the frying pan of life or whatever, like just a bunch of analogies and metaphors and stuff that's like about food and about like, you know what I mean? Because I think that if you were like a before keynote speaker, you could really, and that was like your niche. Like I'm a before lunch keynote speaker. Like I make everybody hungry because I talk about food and I talk about life and like who's hungry right now? We're going to talk about that. You know what I mean? Like you have a hunger for like, you see what I'm saying? Like you could, dude, and you could like really have fun with it. And people could be like you could say, oh, the devil's cake or whatever, like double fudge, brownies or whatever. Everybody's like, oh, I'm so hungry. Like, and that could be like your hook. Like, it could be your joke. You know what I mean? You talk about food, like, all right, I've tempted you enough, and I've messed with your mind enough. Okay, it's time for lunch. And so like you're this funny before lunch, keynote speaker or whatever. I don't know.
That's a good idea. I'm gonna put that down, funny, and I'm gonna add that to my potential ideas list. And but you're on the path. That's where I'm kind of going. And I think that it's part of who I am. It's something that I've put a lot of time and effort and energy and money into learning and mastering. And I think it's something that's valuable. It's something people are interested in, and it's something that I could capitalize on and use to help other people do something else that they love. So I'm always open to possibilities and opportunities and different ideas and things like that. So I think that that's a very important lesson for people to keep in mind.
Awesome. I mean, well, I'm sure we could talk forever. Great conversation. This freaking episode, dude, is like on fire, man. This was so great. Glad we got to do this.
Absolutely.
It's like you've hosted a podcast before. I tell you, I get the feeling like it's like you've hosted a podcast.
Once or twice.
So great. Yeah, so great. So this is the moment of the show as we close where we do a shameless plug. You can plug your friends, quotes, websites, Facebook, your products, movies, give a shout out, whatever it is that you want to shamelessly plug. This is your moment. Go.
Cool. Just MarioPorreca.com. You can find everything on there. Connect with me, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, but you can find all the links there. So that's kind of the hub. It's MarioPorreca, 2 R's, 1 C.com. It's that easy. Everything's there. So just check me out there. And I'm very active on social media. So all my social links are there. You can connect with me. And they're also in the notes here on this episode. So connect with me on social media. I love to have conversations. I love to meet new people. And we'll go from there again. And the other thing is, I guess I'll mention, is for 10-Minute Mindset, my podcast. You can go to 10minutemindset.com. and listen to that. And the other thing about the podcast, though, is we have a Facebook group that is really cool. There's some great people in there. And so you can find the link for the group and everything at 10minutemindset.com. So check that out.
Very cool, man. Hey, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Thank you so much for your time and the value that you gave today.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Anytime, you're always welcome on 10-Minute Mindset, Sean. You know that. Anytime you want to come back on. So let's hook it up and get back together again soon. We have some good stuff to talk about.
Heck yeah, man. Very cool. Maybe we'll see each other at the same event, man. We'll speak at the same event together.
That would be fun. We should actually try to make that possible and coordinate that.
That would be cool. All right. Life Transformation Radio listeners, amazing guest, amazing show, amazing value. If anything resonated with you, hook up with Mario Porreca. He is changing lives and changing minds. If anything resonated with you today on the show, you can subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, TuneIn, Player FM, the Google Play Music app. There's no excuse to not subscribe to the show or say, I don't know where to find it, or just go to blogtalkradio.com. Now, As we close, I always say, live your brand. Find opportunities every day to live out the core values that you have deep in your heart. And I call this living your brand. And until next episode, have a great day.